Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us in the third installment of our Real Estate Investor Masterclass. If you've joined us for our first two installments, we've been talking to the members of a really cool team of investors called JCOR. That's the Joint Chiefs of Real Estate. I love the name. I get a kick out of it every single time. Today we're talking with Noel, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the market analysis aspect. You know, we've talked about kind of generally multifamily syndicate investing, what it is, how it works, how the numbers work, which is crucial. But now we want to talk a little bit about how you find those investments and how do you know that it's an investment worth your time? How do we drill down to the nitty gritty in the market and the property specifically to know that that's something worth your time and worth your money, most importantly. So I'm going to turn it over to Noel. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Cool. So maybe let's get a little bit personal. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your career? I know you're in the Joint Chiefs, so you're also military personnel, and how you got into real estate.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I am active duty Army. I've been actually previously active duty Air Force for about 6 years, but I've spent a total of almost 16 years on active duty in the military. I actually began investing roughly around 2011 was my first investment property, and began really around that time. You know, I didn't really know what I was doing. As most people do starting out.
That's the common thread, I think, with all real estate investors. They're like, I don't know. I heard there was good money in it.
Yeah. So I bought a house and was looking at houses to rent at the time. I had just gone to flight school in Enterprise, Alabama, and when I started looking at properties and rents and, oh, wait, the mortgage is lower than the rent rate here.
Yep.
Well, why don't I just go buy a house and live in that while I'm here? And which I did. Didn't know, anything about how to look for the right price, things like that. But, ended up buying a little bit high, no biggie. But, it was a low mortgage.
That's the price of your education, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I learned a lot on this one.
Yeah.
So I then had a buddy of mine that I went to college with. He also came to flight school. Came in as one of my roommates, and I charged him half of the going rent rate, and he was happy with that.
Yeah.
And it practically covered my mortgage, and that was the first real investing venture, I would say.
Yes.
More of a house hack in a way.
Yeah.
So at that point, yeah, exactly. It worked out great. And from there, I kept that house. I've been renting it. Still have that house to this day. Left there, got stationed in Hawaii, and spent 4 years in Hawaii, which has an absolutely crazy high market there.
That market is super inflated. Yeah.
Yes, very competitive. Very little land, so there's always a demand. Appreciation is just constantly going up.
Yep.
Used my VA loan at the time, which is such a great benefit for military.
Yeah.
Zero money down, and bought a short sale, which at this point I had done enough education to know never buy at retail price. So
right.
We bought it low, experienced a lot of appreciation in the market, came away after 3 years with a good pocket full of capital money that we then took to Alabama, which I came back to for my next duty station. So during that time, we had looked at investing, and obviously just the high prices deterred us. There's a lot that we didn't know still, but it was really education. And got to Alabama, and by that point, we were ready to take it a step further. So my wife and I started doing flips at that point. Went through about 5 different flips, rehabs. We still got one of those that we went in, rehabbed it. Cash flows really well for us. And so now,
sorry, which market in Alabama?
This was in Enterprise, Alabama. So this is yes, very little known area, but not a booming economy.
That's a tertiary market if I ever heard one.
Absolutely, it's not a place I'm going to continue to invest in, but that market is held up by the military. So the positives, we do have great military renters that pay on time, but it does have some risk. With if the bases were to close or something like that. So that was really the last of our single families when I left there last year, and so far just moved to Texas about a year ago, and have closed on a duplex again with the VA loan.
Nice.
and that one's doing quite well. And also formed the J-Corps partnership and really have turned all the focus of my efforts into multifamily at this point.
All right.
Miles and I first met, and shortly after we met James and Tom, brought them into the group, and we have been working it hard. So
yeah, you guys
toward
have
those
been
syndications.
Yeah, you guys have been hitting the bricks for sure, which actually is perfect. So I didn't realize that you had only recently moved to Texas. And that's, I guess, a perfect segue for me to ask you a little bit about, like, Texas is a big state, but anybody that's, been researching real estate investing for the last, I don't know, almost 10 years knows that Texas is like one of those, like, everybody invests in Texas. And for various reasons, if you're looking commercial or single family, et cetera. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about, was Texas a move that you made because of real estate, or was it your career and you just happened to be in a real good place for real estate, or how did that come about?
It was all the Army. So
Okay.
I was
Thanks, Uncle Sam.
Yes, he said, yeah, this is where you're going next. So
yeah,
I was
really
like,
good.
This is a great opportunity. I couldn't be in a better place. So
no, fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about Texas in terms of real estate? What about Texas? And again, I know it's a big place, so feel free to drill down to a more local level. What about Texas do you find to be so promising in terms of real estate investment long term?
So there's multiple markets here. So there's a lot of different opportunities, and some of really whatever your strategy is, there's a market that can cater to that strategy. You've got Austin and Dallas Fort Worth area, whereas if you go right into those center of those cities, you've got some very compressed low cap rates, which drives high prices. Not a lot of room for value add. You'll get steady cash flows, and which can be great for a long-term hold. Our strategy more toward value add properties,
right,
where we can cash flow, but we can also raise values considerably, pull money out, and bring higher returns to our investors. That's our strategy. So with that, there are markets in the outskirts of those, and that's where they feed off of the strong economy in those centers of Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, and many secondary markets is what we really look at outside there, where the cap rates are a little bit higher. The prices are slightly lower than you would normally find. So a little bit less price to get into, and usually a lot more room to improve upon and gain value in as well.
Okay. Yeah. So you're looking at markets, just for our attendees who maybe aren't familiar with terms secondary, tertiary markets. Secondary markets being the smaller towns, not little like villages, but smaller towns outside of major hubs that, as you said, feed off of the strong economies of these larger cities. And essentially, you can think about any, like where I'm from, Seattle, we have, the rest of the South Puget Sound, we have, Tacoma and Kent, people who might work in Seattle or in the surrounding areas, but can't necessarily afford to live there, are going to be occupying. And the more there is appreciation and growth in those hubs, the more the average person moves out, right? So you've got a constant stream of renters. Every year, a new stream of renters, because as prices go up, and Seattle again is a perfect example because we've got Amazon, we've got Microsoft, we've got all this stuff. Every year, people are getting priced out of that city like crazy. And as a result, Tacoma, which when I was growing up was considered like not really that great, like people used to call it Tacompton because that was back when Compton was a topical reference to make. And now it's expensive. Like you can have beautiful waterfront condos and stuff, and it's and so it was a secondary market that's like being pushed, not quite primary, but it's being pushed up the ladder because of the spread essentially of Seattle. So you're talking about those kinds of places where there's that room for growth still.
Yes, absolutely.
Love that. Awesome. Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit about specifics. So we're talking, all right, secondary, maybe sometimes tertiary markets, which are obviously towns sort of one step removed, right, from what we were just discussing. Can we talk about some of the most important macro factors? So macro, for our viewers here, I almost said listeners, doing a podcast for our viewers here. Macro being big scale factors that might apply to a larger geographical region, and then micro as we're really drilling down neighborhood by neighborhood, specific job centers, et cetera. Give me your top 5 macro factors that you look for when you're vetting a new market, and why those are so important to you from your experience.
Okay. Yes. So really, we do look at 5 macro factors, and they are population growth, income growth, home value growth, the crime trend, the job growth. So those are our top 5 that we look at. So the reason we look at these, obviously, population growth, that's a great indicator that there's desirable living conditions there.
Right. People want to live there.
Yeah, there's a reason that people are moving there. Sometimes it's their jobs move them there, but a majority of the time it's, this is the area we like to live, and it could be, there's better jobs, there's good health care, there's good housing.
Good schools.
Yeah, good schools, retail, all these things that improve quality of life. People are drawn to that. It's safe, things like that. There's not a lot of crime. Those are all play into that.
Okay.
And of course, a lot of these factors all tie into each other in some way or another, as you'll see. The income growth, this really indicates that there's a strong economy that ties pretty much equally with job growth. And really with income growth, there's more tax revenue that results, and that gets directed back into the government, back into public services, infrastructure, and it can also, help drive more economic, businesses and everything to that area.
Innovation and expansion. And not to harp on schools, but again, the more tax revenue you have, the better funded your schools are. And we all know that a well-educated populace is a thriving populace. So that's
exactly.
You want to see that income increasing. Okay, great.
For sure. And then home value growth. So really, this is due to development of new infrastructure, new market drivers such as schools, malls, airports, any of that. It's really going to drive up values of the area because there's going to be a demand at that point. Obviously the rules of supply and demand. You're going to drive up values, and the more people move to an area, you start chipping away at what's available. And at some point, then there's a shortage of houses, and they're going to start going up.
Yep. Okay.
Then that's going to drive more construction and everything else. So all tying in and all working together, very fluid, how it all ties together.
Yeah.
For the crime trend, this is one that, is obviously important because it affects livability, the desirability of an area. And it also affects not just that, but for businesses, just for bringing business to the area. If they see a high crime rate, how's that going to affect, the level of customers that they're going to get?
And insurance rates.
Insurance rate. Yeah. It's going to make things more expensive.
Yeah.
It has an effect in a lot of different ways. So we have very specific metrics that we use and criteria that we use. We're looking at all 5 of these. Looking and when we do these, for all these markets, we make sure they meet these certain criteria, very specific analytical criteria. Okay. Job growth is the last one, and very, ties in almost directly with income growth, but more jobs, more tax revenue, more expendable income going out there as well, that people are going to be able to pay for higher rents. They're going to be able to pay higher mortgage rates. They're going to go out and shop and bring that money back to the economy, and thus adding to the cycle.
Yeah. And probably take more, maybe start their own businesses. People that have excess income tend to be able to take more risks and put more out there, which is great.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but my guess is that there's another connection in terms of the crime rate, that if you see jobs growth and income growth, probably in those areas, you also see lower crime, because we know that poverty and crime are best friends, right? And Absolutely. So if you see an area that has money being put into it and that money is actually going to the people that live there. That suddenly it's a lot safer, and the schools get better, and everything lifts from the bottom up, et cetera. So
and that whole thing with poverty ties directly to education as well. So it's
Okay, so it's a rising tide lifts all boats, and those boats are the macro factors that you look at. So I like that. That's great. So and just to be clear, so these are all factors that really, whether you're looking at multifamily or single family or anything else, these are terms and concepts that any investor really should get comfortable with. But the way your team works is that you have specific numerical criteria. So if you're like, okay, we want to invest in this market in Texas, we've never done this area before, we're going to compile all this data from reliable sources like the Census Bureau and Bureau of Labor Statistics and stuff like that, and see where the actual numbers go. And it's a yes or a no. Either it's there or it's not there.
Yes, correct. Yeah,
okay.
That's it.
That makes it easy.
Yeah, there are some exceptions to certain rules, depending. There could be other factors that we play in. Certain things that would mitigate, and we can take exceptions for. But in general, this is what we try to stick with on those macro factors for markets.
And do you find, and this is maybe a little bit off script, but do you find that in your experience, having kind of pretty hard line rules, like obviously sometimes there's wiggle room, but generally speaking, having like some kind of rule that it's a yes or a no, and does that help you take kind of the emotion? Because I assume, especially when you get in bigger projects, like apartment complexes that are 100 plus unit, there's that emotional excitement that comes along with any investment where you see all the possibilities, and humans naturally kind of tend to downplay the negatives because they're so excited about what could be, right? And do you find that having rules like that kind of keeps you guys a little bit level-headed even after all these years?
Oh yes, for sure. Yeah, and that's so important. This is this is a numbers game, and it's all about protecting our investors. And there's times where we think, we could be a little more aggressive with our assumptions on something and make a little more profit, but we're not doing a service to our investors if, for instance, the expenses end up being higher than we thought on something, and then that hurts our returns, or vacancies end up being higher. So we obviously try to be as conservative as we can and keep very consistent metrics on our underwriting with our market research, and stay within those bounds very, very consistently.
Yeah.
And that, so we know that, if we do go into this deal, it's going to work.
Yeah.
And if there is a downturn in the market, if there's another COVID
lockdown, pandemic, maybe?
Yeah, another pandemic, another round of
or an ongoing pandemic that never ends. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're doing all right at this point, but we don't know how things are going to go over the next year, 2 years. So
I think that's been our biggest lesson, is that you just have to take every day as it comes, because literally nothing is predictable anymore. So it's making us all more resilient, right?
Yes. And so, we take all of that into account. We really do stress testing on our underwriting to see if we can accept up to a 25 to 30% vacancy and still break even or cash flow, then we know that's going to be a safe bet.
And that's really, again, for people maybe who aren't as experienced, that's incredibly high vacancy.
Exactly.
That is 30% vacancy is like unheard of in normal circumstances. That would be an emergency situation where people are like on the street. So that being a break even is really a very conservative, like it would have to get very bad for you to not break even.
Yeah, so we're operating at the standard market rate of whatever, 95% occupancy in that range. Then we know we're cash flowing great. We're going to make great returns. Downturn in the market, we're still going to be returning, maybe not as high, but we're still going to be getting there. So
plus,
that's what we try to do.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
I was going to say, when we talked to Miles, we talked about the preferred return and how basically that's, no investment is a guarantee, but that's kind of the best way that you guys can ensure, is a better word, that your investors, get their money, and they get their money first. And so what I hear you saying about these consistent metrics and how you view macros, and I assume micros as well, we're gonna get into that, being very consistent and sort of following these rules. It is one of those things that you've organized your investment structure in such a way that benefits the investors, which is your fiduciary duty, but it also benefits you. And it's sometimes rare to find investments where both sides are aligned. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times it's like, if the investor does this, then I actually do okay. Or if I sell a piece of real estate and it's very expensive, I actually make more commission. In this situation, your returns are lockstep with the investors because they get paid. If they don't get what they were told they were going to get in the first year, you don't get paid until they are made whole. Yep. And so that I like to hear, that you guys have these rules in place and that you obey them from a sense of fiduciary duty, but also a sense of self-preservation, because that is the most powerful driver of all. And I want your self-preservation to be in favor of my pocketbook, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, we want everybody to come out of this happy and really excited with their returns.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so macros, got it. We've got and the fact that they all kind of go together makes sense. Let's talk about some of the smaller. Let's say you've decided on a market, secondary market outside of Houston or Dallas or something, and you're like, okay, we feel good about the macros here. When you're looking for specific properties, what kind of micro school zone, that kind of things, are you looking for to find a specific investment?
So a lot of the things, and we follow a list of metrics on this as well for neighborhoods and sub-markets within those markets. What we will look at, just in general, eyes on ground, we'll do, Google Street Map View, check out what's in the area. Obviously,
one of my favorite tricks.
Yeah. Schools are a great one. You see what the quality, what's the review of these schools, how are they doing? Look at what businesses, retail's huge. If there's national retailers, big box, your Best Buy, your Starbucks, all these big ones, those are really good indicators because these companies spend millions of dollars on market research.
Yeah. Why do the job when somebody else has already paid professionals to a lot of money to do this research? You know that they would not have invested if they didn't think that it was worth their money. And I like that. That's efficient.
Exactly. Yes. For sure. And it gives us great confidence that, that this area is good, or it is already at a good rate, but it's improving. We know there's promise for it as well. Those are the two biggest ones. You look at, what jobs are out there. What are you seeing? Nothing but fast food and gas stations. It's not so much. But if you're seeing a lot of that big box retail, that's a good indicator.
Okay.
And then for the more analytical side of things, we're looking a lot at the median household income of that area as one. So what we look at there is generally a window we want to look for, like a minimum of about $40,000 a year to $70,000 a year is a good range that we look at, because anything under $40,000, you're generally going to see a lot higher delinquencies in their rents or mortgage payments. Higher than 70,000. Yeah. And we invest for cash flow. So that 40 to 70 is optimized for cash flow. Once you start looking at places with median incomes of 70,000 and above, you're looking at more the appreciation.
Not as many renters.
Exactly. A lot more people are buying houses. And you're not going to see that. You're going to see the lower cap rates, in which in turn, generally lower cash on cash returns, but appreciation wise in the long term, can have great effects. So, for us, obviously our cash flow is what we're looking at. The median contract rent in the area is a huge one as well. So we look at usually between $700 to $1,000 a month is as a range that we look at. And again, for pretty much the same reasons. You're looking, below 700 is you're going to see a lot more delinquencies in that level of rental, and over 1,000 a month is more toward the appreciation side. So that's that sweet spot for cash flow. For the unemployment rate, that's the next, is that we generally look for that to be no more than about 2% over what the city's rate is. So if you're looking at, say, Dallas-Fort Worth, whatever their unemployment rate is, we want to look at whatever that surrounding city is in that secondary market, that it's no more than 2% over that city's rate.
Okay.
So what that does, it provides a buffer.
Yeah, it's a little bit of wiggle room there. Yeah.
Yeah, for any unemployment increase, during this COVID time or any other future recession, which we have heard a lot of experience, people predicting that we have one coming, in another year or two. So
you're like, okay.
Yeah, we want to make sure we're ready for that. So, the poverty level is another one we look at.
Okay.
We look for anything preferably under 15%, but definitely under 20% to minimize any delinquencies on that. The ethnic mix, that's an interesting one, but what we look for there is at least two major ethnicities in that submarket, with the largest mix slice ideally being smaller than 75% of the total residents. So
okay, so you don't want a super homogeneous population.
correct.
You want diversity.
Yeah, so that really will, what that does is it increases your ability to keep your units rented.
Really?
So it's kind of interesting, but
Yeah.
that's some things we learned from some very well-educated, experienced analysts in this area. Nice. So that does help.
Okay.
We try to look for that.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I don't see how this just popped in my head, so I don't see how this correlation would work. But like the way that struck me is sort of how when you look at the economic makeup of a market, you don't want any one industry to represent more than like 30% of the economic activity. You want a really diverse economy so that, like you mentioned about the place in Alabama, if that base closes, that town like disappears because it's the whole economy essentially. You don't want that. You don't want like a steel town, Detroit, Michigan type of situation.
The industries that are in that market, you want to definitely have a good spread of different industries, whether it be healthcare, manufacturing, all of that, and one of the big risks that a lot of times is talked about is, big military towns. There's a majority of that economy is the military and that particular base or post. And in some areas it's a higher risk than others. Where we look a lot in Killeen, Texas, it is a military town predominantly, and we understand that risk. That's why we have taken a lot of time to really know that market. What we do know there, it is one of the largest posts in the military. It is pretty much an anchor for any other installation.
The armory as well. It's not going anywhere. They would have to disband the military.
It is one of the oldest and the largest. And there have been talks of base realignments throughout the years. Fort Hood there in Killeen has always been never talked about moving. I don't know where you would move, 3 divisions of soldiers, contractors, all the many jobs that are there. So there's great economic drivers, great jobs there.
And good stability.
And there's stability. Yes, you have a lot of solid renters there with the military, with those contractors, a lot of retirees in that area as well. But yeah, I mean, it's, we've, with some of the research there, that's what I'm talking about. One of the mitigating factors is, in that case, we feel like we can accept that level of risk based off of that knowledge that this is, if there is a base realignment, they are going to be accepting other units from other places.
Right.
And there's not going to be a movement of something that's established. And, it's definitely a huge part of the Army for sure. So,
well, and government backed, you don't have to worry. It's not the same as another industry. You know what I mean?
Correct.
The government's not going to disband the military. So you know what I mean? Whereas we could develop technology that, for example, wipes out coal. You know what I mean? Like that is a thing that can happen. Or oil or whatever, but the military is probably going to be around. So.
Yes, exactly. And that's something, that's another example of what we've seen in some of the cities to the north, closer to Louisiana. You got the fracking, the oil industry is huge. And we looked at some of those cities and as we looked at the metrics, the oil industry was probably 50% of the income, the jobs there. And it just, no, we're not doing that. Yeah. Like you don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, we're not getting rid of oil anytime soon, but definitely there is a move towards more sustainable energies, and whatever your opinions about that, it's just true. So it's just a smart investment move to not put all your eggs in that oil basket. So
for sure.
I'm hearing that and I like that. So I guess then, the final kind of piece of the puzzle, and you're sort of moving down this pyramid, right? Like state, general market, then the micro market within that market, and then we're at property selection. Can you talk to us a little bit about when you are looking for a property specifically and you're vetting that property? Because I've been talking with you guys for months, and regularly we're looking at a product, and then, you do your due diligence and you're like, actually, no, that's not going to make us money.
Yeah.
That process is so crucial. Can you talk to us about what you're looking for when you're picking a property to vet?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we're focused on C-class and B-class apartments generally. So that's, your A-class, just as a frame of reference for those who don't know, an A-class apartment is usually your highest priced. It's got the most amenities. You're usually going to have your granite countertops, your stainless steel appliances. It's a luxury apartment. You'll have your nice fitness center, pools, jacuzzi, anything you could think of. They'll probably have it. So for us, we should generally try to go a little bit to the middle range. We don't like D-class properties because they're your level of vacancies, delinquencies are going to be huge, and the headache is not worth it. Yeah. Level of repairs needed, the crime rates.
A lot of deferred maintenance on those buildings.
Exactly. So with that sweet spot for us is the C, usually a C minus property, where we know we can turn it into a C or a C into a B. Okay. And usually located in C plus or B areas where the area is just slightly better than what the property is. Okay. So we know that's going to give us more room to raise rents and to bring or to even rehab things to a higher level, to a nicer level, which will demand more rents in line with the market. So that's predominantly what we use, and we're looking for a specific size of property. Usually unit count, we're usually looking for 50 to 200 in that range. Okay. And there's pluses to both. Anything under 80 units versus over 80 units, there's a lot of pros and cons to each one, and I won't go too long, get in depth on that, but generally, yeah, we like both sides, but usually at least 50 units. Okay. And just for the economies of scale, and you'll see that, and once we move in, I can show some examples of that later. Economies of scale are huge. So the more units, obviously you're diluting your risk and spreading that out, and you're able to more effectively gain value in your property. So we're also looking at properties that are mismanaged. So with that could be extremely high expenses, could be deferred maintenance. There's rents that are well below market that can automatically, as soon as one goes vacant and you turn it around, you can bump it up another $50 or another $100, things like that. So a lot of times people don't realize what kind of property they have, or they could be it could just be something, a life event. There's been a divorce they've got to sell. There's been
inherited.
Exactly, inherited. I don't want to pay the taxes.
I don't want to. This is not what I want to do. Now I have like 80 tenants.
Yes. Spoke to a partner recently, and he was looking at a property that was going for a great price. That one of the partners died, and the other one was elderly, and it was too much for them to take on by themselves. And they said, hey, I just need to get rid of this as soon as possible. And things like that, they can present great opportunities, great deals. And not that you ever want anyone to go through hard times, but they're out there.
It's a win-win in that scenario, because the hard time already happened. There's nothing that you can do about that. And he says, I want to not deal with this. And you say, I'd like to take this off your hands and do things, and truthfully, we've had conversations off air before where the stuff that you guys are doing to these buildings is making them better for tenants. Like, the quality of life is being improved. So it really is a win-win. And especially in a situation like that guy's not going to have the energy or the desire to put the work into the building that the tenants really deserve. And so this is a much better.
Oh, yes, definitely. And we try to approach all of the deals from that viewpoint that, we're looking to identify what's driving that seller and come up with an offer or a structure, something that really helps benefit them and us, and really, help solve whatever problem they're facing.
And I think that's just a good attitude to have. A lot of time investments can get very him or me, very, very cutthroat. And that's one thing that I know Mary and I have mentioned before, that we really enjoy working with you guys, is that you have that kind of attitude, that it's not like there's a finite amount of opportunity or a finite amount of success, that we can we can make decisions that actively and purposefully benefit everyone involved, without losing any benefit to ourselves. And I just think that,
Oh yeah.
soapbox, but that's just such a refreshing way to look at investing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is such a relationship people business that, and I love that. I love to develop relationships with people. I love to, understand what drives them, what will make them happy, and see where we, what kind of value can we bring.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it comes back tenfold. You start developing these relationships, and you give something to someone, and then next thing you know, they're like, "Oh, I heard about this. So, I know this guy who does this because you mentioned something about needing this."
Yeah.
Send it to you, and all of a sudden, it's like, wow, it opens more doors. So everybody helps each other. It's just this huge abundance mindset. It's amazing.
Exactly. Love it. That's, we're all about that. So, okay, to get back now, the emotional part of how nice investing is for everyone, to get back, you were mentioning, before I sidetracked us, sorry, that you look for mismanagement. I remember I was talking to you guys about a deal you were vetting a while ago. I don't think you ended up executing, but one of the big opportunity for value add was that they had kind of high vacancy, like 17% or something. And, it was because they didn't advertise their vacancies like at all, like anywhere, like not on Facebook, not on Zillow or whatever. And that's such a simple thing. Obviously, whoever was managing, it didn't occur to them, or it wasn't worth the effort. And it really is such a small amount of effort to launch your returns to a completely different level. And I think it's good for our investors to hear the kinds of things that, again, we kind of assume everybody is already thought of. And it's like, no, there's opportunities here to make money and benefit people very easily. Like,
Oh
like,
yeah, absolutely.
Threshold for value add is low sometimes.
Yeah, there's definitely opportunities out there. Yeah, and that deal for sure. Yeah, there was some issues there with the management, and we unfortunately weren't able to close based off of some things that ended up being slightly different than advertised on their materials. But we had to stick to our numbers. Another case we were talking about with metrics is being disciplined with that, and we weren't that far off. It would have been easy to. As anxious as we were to get into a deal.
Well, and y'all had been doing due diligence, and I think this is a perfect example for, a lot of people, like, I don't want to give anyone the opinion that multifamily syndicate investing is the kind of thing anybody can just sort of like, I'll try that. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Y'all have a team of people and rules and experience behind it. But I think that's such a perfect example of, on the one hand, there are some very, frankly, low-hanging fruits, like not advertising and being able to push up your numbers. But on the other hand, you spent time vetting this deal. And then when it got to the part where the seller hadn't disclosed something, you had to go back to those rules, as hard as I'm sure that was, and be diligent, because it isn't just your money on the line. And
absolutely,
that's the kind of thing that any investor, new or experienced, knows how valuable it is to have somebody that's going to, be sure and not just do it because they already put the work in, so why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's for me, I think it ties a lot into my military background and the discipline that we build in the military, especially being a helicopter pilot.
Oh yeah,
your life depends upon your ability to be disciplined, keep your aircraft within the set limitations of the engine, the rotor, all the there's very defined parameters that you need to stay within to be able to keep flying. So
to just live,
just to not fall out of the sky.
Just to not fall out of the sky. The risk is very high. And a lot of things you have to do, I assume, having never flown a helicopter, but certain things in certain order, right? Like there's an operation and you just do the same thing every time. And that doesn't mean sometimes you won't need to be a little bit flexible, but it's that rote.
Yeah, absolutely. And it ties very much the same, where everything is done by a checklist as a pilot. You never just by memory go start flipping switches, because you will miss something.
Don't do that. Yeah.
It's always, as a team, we work as a team in a Black Hawk helicopter as well. You have a 4-person team, 2 pilots, 2 crew chiefs, and everyone knows their roles. Same thing with this, and I try to apply that to our team and really help guide us. We have all our guys have some great talents, and I think we all do very well together. And I try to help bring us together, identify who is the strongest in what areas, and really leverage those strengths to propel us forward. And it
seems like it's going great.
yeah, it's going well. And I love working with these guys. So I think we're going to definitely bring some great success soon.
And we're just so excited to get to be, working with you guys on this and on future deals. Like I said, I think the mindset is like right at the same level. And, we know that our viewers and community in the embassy community, so FSOs, but also a lot of military, FBI, there's so many different groups of people around the world serving their country, and not necessarily having the time or the ability to make the most of all the things that our country has to offer in terms of, building wealth and a solid financial future. And I think for them seeing, you guys are of that same group, you're all military or FSO, and that is such a, I don't know, like a comforting presence a little bit when you are around the world and kind of figuring out a new language, a new home every 2 years, etc. To be like, nah, these guys get it. They know my life. They know the moving, all that stuff, and they know what it takes to build a future remotely, essentially, which is great.
Sure. Yeah, and having been in those shoes, and I know the demands that the military puts on you, and the constant moving, the work hours, and that's why we try to really. We push ourselves to do the work so we can provide these opportunities where someone who doesn't have the time to go, syndicate an apartment building themselves, or maybe, I don't have any money necessarily for that, or maybe they've been in stock market and because it's all they have time for, but the excessive risk of the stock market, looking for other options. Right now it's
all over the place.
We definitely, we know this is a great alternative, and especially with the tax benefits and steady returns and the lower risk level for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's jump back in a little bit for this last little piece. I know you prepared some slides for us to kind of go through just an easy example of how value add works on a property. So I'm going to let you share your screen if you would, and just walk us through that.
Okay, absolutely. So like I mentioned, with our strategy, we strive for value add properties that cash flow well. And I will pull this up to give you a run through and just an example, a very basic case study of how this value add can work. So for this example, we're going to use a 100 unit apartment building at $700 a month rent. And with that, that's a $70,000 per month. Times 12, 840,000 rental income for the year.
Okay.
So generally, in most cases, you're going to see about a 50% expense ratio. So in this case, we'll just say it's 420, 50% of the 840. That gives us a net operating income of $420,000. So in this market, we're going to assume it has a cap rate of 6%. So the equation for the value of a property is your NOI divided by your cap rate, which is here 420,000 divided by 0.06, and that property is valued at $7 million, and that's based off of how it's performing at that time.
Okay.
So the NOI is, as you can tell, is your income minus your expenses. Basic calculation there, and then you do your NOI divided by cap rate. So using that as a starting point, $7 million value. If we were to assume we bought this property and we know instantly we can raise rents by $25 each on these, that's a small raise. It's
not a huge.
It's minimal. It's not going to make a big difference on most people's paycheck, and it's generally we're going to look at potentially being able to raise much higher than that. But this is just for basic purposes. You can see how much of a jump the value you can have based off of this. So in this case, 100 times 725, we're looking at 72,500 times 12 for 870. So you have $30,000 increase in rental income just from a $25 increase in rents. You subtract the same expenses, 420,000, is assuming you didn't reduce expenses at all. NOI of 450. So you gain 30,000 on your NOI. Same cap rate, do the same equation, you get a $500,000 increase in value for
Yeah.
a $25 rent increase.
Yeah, for which each tenant only has to pay $25 a month. So it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see just how leveraged that is. It's pretty amazing.
And then if you do reduce expenses or have a larger building, you were mentioning earlier about the economies of scale, and typically that's, you know, when you're doing rehab or something, but it works both ways. If you had 1,000 units across multiple buildings.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Then it leverages it that much more. And
Yeah,
it's,
exactly.
it's amazing. And then off of this, you know, you're going to see these metrics there. So that's just if, you know, assuming that's all you did was a $25 increase. The next case study, this one is just looking at it from the other side. So what if we just, we knew we couldn't really raise rents, but we found a place we could reduce expenses. Works the same way, but from the other end. So here you start with the same amount, 840. We have $450,000 expenses. So this is, you know, say they're 53.5%. So, you know, hey, I can reduce these down to a 50% or even better. So, or about a 50%. So you're looking at an NOI of $390,000, which is lower than your previous example. Same market.
Yeah, same
yeah, you're doing everything the same. So 6.5 is what that current value is based off of that 3.5% difference in expenses.
Yeah.
So from that point, you know, okay, I see where I can cut expenses out of this deal, bring it and normalize it down to a 50%. Immediately, you've done the same thing. You brought it up from 6.5 to 7 million.
Yeah.
So
you know, both.
Yeah. Then if you do both, you from that point now you've got $1 million in value just from each lowering expenses on one side, raising the rents on the other. So that tells you the power of good management and a good business plan. And that's really where we focus a lot, is developing a good business plan that we know we can increase that NOI, maximize it to its full potential. Not just raising rents. I mean, there's so many creative ways that we look for to add income, whether it be laundry income. There's, you know, assigned parking spots you can charge monthly rates for. There's covered parking.
Okay.
There's so many vending machines. You name it. There's so many creative options.
Rental of a common space for parties if they wanted to.
Yes. Okay. Yep. You can have. I've seen you know, storage units on site. You can
literally anything.
Yeah, you think of it, you could probably do it. So all of that adding income, the expenses, you know, there's many things in there that are fixed expenses. Some of them can change from month to month, but certain things we'll look at is like what are the taxes? What will the taxes go up to when we purchase this? Is it going to reassess and be much higher than the current taxes are? And we usually plan for that and assume that's going to happen. But we will also plan to protest the taxes if they do. So there's an opportunity to potentially lower those taxes back down or not increase quite as much, save us some money.
Okay.
On the expense side, there's things like management fee and payroll. You want to be careful about trying to cut those too low because you want to make sure you have real good property management. Yes. So in that case, it's probably more of an investment.
Take care of the property.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one thing that, you know, some are considered more expenses. This one it's an expense, but you also have to think about what is it doing for your property and how is it translating into how the property performs as a whole. So and many other things. One thing we do look a lot at is utilities. What's going on with utilities? If we do a walkthrough and if we hear toilets running, there's, you know, a leaky toilet. It's constantly running water. So what can we do to decrease the water bill, decrease the electric bill, all of those sort of things, putting LED lights to save on power. There's so many options that we look to pursue on that, and, you know, really optimize the NOI to what it can be.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, I love that. And I guess like I'm very analytical, numbers driven. So like when I talk to Miles, I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's talk about the numbers. Give it to me. But I also love that there is like a little bit of an art. There's a little bit of creativity that goes into looking at what the building could be and finding like opportunities for other income and stuff like that. There's a little bit of a outside the box blue sky of it. And I think that that's fun. I think I'm like, yeah, that's great. And again, it improves the quality of life for the tenants. So it's fantastic. Well, Noel, is there anything else that you feel like we didn't cover, or that you just want to share about your experience, or what you guys are doing? Hit me. Whatever you got. If anything. No pressure. If you're good.
No, we really we're excited to be a part of this and really tell our story and what we're doing, what our plans are, and we look forward to hopefully speaking to many people that are looking for options and what to do with their money, and especially in these uncertain times. We really feel confident that we are we're taking appropriate steps to bring great returns. And, we really hope we can team up with some people in the future, and we look forward to that.
Well, and this will be promoted across embassies across the world. We'll be hosting it on our website. It'll be a part of our normal social media. So we will definitely be talking to you soon. In the meantime, is there anywhere specific people can reach out to you, a website, an email, anything like that, that you want to plug?
My personal website is Invest with Eagles. That is my email address, investwithegles@gmail.com. And we are, getting the website stuff locked in. So.
No worries. Well, thank you again for taking the time. This was super informative, and I know all our viewers are definitely going to take away some really important information, whether they are wanting to do multifamily on their own, interested in getting into syndicates, or just want to learn about, I think, asset and market vetting, like that. No matter what kind of asset you're looking at, that's really important stuff. So thank you again for your time, and thank you to all of you for taking the time to watch. Sorry about this weird sunlight spot. We will be back with our interview with Tom next time, and we're going to talk about some big picture stuff, what the outlook is for multifamily in the age of COVID, with the uncertainty and all that, why we're still bullish on it, and what specific reasons we have to be confident in these investments going forward. So thank you again to everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Claire. Appreciate it.
Bye.